"Excuse me," one of them asked. "What is your relationship to the child holding this camera?" The sound of the doorbell echoed through the warm, festive living room, sharp and jarring, cutting through the tension that had settled over the room like a thick fog. Mom froze mid-step, her hand hovering near the doorknob, a scowl still etched on her face from her outburst moments earlier. The crumpled shreds of my family portrait lay scattered on the floor at her feet, pieces of our happy family torn apart, just like everything else. Sam, who had been standing beside her, snickering at the chaos he'd helped stir, suddenly went quiet, his eyes widening as he caught sight of the two uniformed officers through the window beside the door. Grandma's hand flew to her chest, her face draining of color, a silent premonition settling over her. Grandpa, who had been glaring at Dad, his jaw tight with anger and disappointment, stepped forward, his posture stiffening, as if he already knew what the officers were about to say. Mom's hand trembled as she pulled open the door, her voice cracking, the anger in her tone replaced by a nervous, forced calm. "Can I help you, officers? We're in the middle of a family reunion dinner." Her words died in her throat when her eyes locked onto the small, blood-stained object in the taller officer's hand. It was my camera, the one she'd tossed out the car window hours earlier, its plastic casing scraped and dented, the lens smudged with dark, dried red that made my invisible chest ache. The other officer held a crumpled photo, and even from where I floated near the ceiling, I could see my small, blue-coated figure on it, lying in the middle of the highway's asphalt, the white snow around me stained pink and red. Mom's face turned as white as the snow outside, her knees buckling, and Dad rushed forward to catch her, his own face ashen, his glasses slipping down his nose. The taller officer stepped into the foyer, his expression somber, his voice low and steady, the kind of voice people use when they have to say the worst things imaginable. "Ma'am, sir, we're with the State Highway Patrol. We received a call about a pedestrian accident on Interstate 87 approximately 3 hours ago. A young girl, 6 years old, matching the description of your daughter, Chloe Bennett." He paused, his eyes sweeping over the stunned faces in the room, landing on the shreds of my drawing on the floor, on Sam's wide, terrified eyes, on Grandma's quivering lips. "We found this camera on her person at the scene. The GPS tracker on it led us here. We're sorry to inform you that she did not survive the collision. The driver of the semi-truck that hit her called 911 immediately, but she was gone before the ambulance arrived." The words hung in the air, heavy and cold, a death knell that shattered the fragile calm of the New Year's Eve gathering. Mom let out a blood-curdling scream, the kind that comes from the deepest, darkest part of a person's soul, and she collapsed into Dad's arms, her body shaking so hard I thought she might break. "No," she whimpered over and over, her hands clawing at Dad's back. "That's not possible. Her GPS was moving. She was coming home. She was cheating, taking a ride. She wasn't hurt. This is a mistake, a terrible mistake." Dad held her tight, but his own body was trembling, his eyes fixed on the blood-stained camera, and I could see the tears welling up in them, the guilt crashing over him like a wave. He'd hesitated. He'd doubted me. He'd let Mom send me out into the cold, and now I was gone. Grandma sank into the nearest armchair, her hands covering her face, silent sobs racking her body, and Grandpa knelt beside her, his rough, calloused hand patting her back, his own eyes glistening with tears he refused to let fall. "Jennifer," he said, his voice thick with rage and grief, his eyes boring into Mom's broken form, "you did this. You kicked a 6-year-old child out of a car in 10 degrees below zero, on a highway, with no coat, no food, no water. You gave her a camera to track her like a prisoner, made her count 3,000 steps as punishment for hesitating on a math question. This is on you. All of it." Mom didn't answer, just buried her face in Dad's chest, her screams turning into quiet, ragged gasps, but I could hear her whispering over and over, "I didn't mean it. I just wanted her to be better. I just wanted her to fit in." Sam stood in the corner, his small body frozen, his face pale, his lower lip trembling. He'd never seen Mom like this, never seen Dad cry, and never felt the weight of something so terrible, something he'd helped cause. I floated down beside him, my invisible hand reaching out to touch his shoulder, and I remembered the way he'd grinned in the car when he asked me 1+1, the way he'd mocked me for being slow, the way he'd agreed with Mom that I needed to exercise more. For a second, I hated him. For a second, I wished he could feel the cold I'd felt, the pain of my knees scraping on the asphalt, the fear of the truck's lights blinding me, the loneliness of counting steps no one was there to celebrate. But then I saw the tears fall from his eyes, saw him whisper, "I'm sorry, Chloe. I didn't mean for you to get hurt. I just wanted Mom to look at me." And in that moment, I didn't hate him anymore. I pitied him, because he was just a kid, too, a kid who'd been taught that love was earned with perfect grades, with prodigy-level math skills, with never making a mistake. A kid who'd never known what it was like to be loved just for being himself, the way I'd known Grandma's love, the way I'd always hoped Mom and Dad would love me. The officers stayed for an hour asking questions, taking statements, telling Mom and Dad about the hospital, about the funeral home, about the steps they'd need to take in the days ahead. Dad answered most of the questions, his voice flat, his eyes empty, while Mom sat on the couch, staring at the blood-stained camera the officers had set on the coffee table, as if she could will it to show her me. Alive and counting steps. steps, coming home to the reunion dinner. When the officers left, they closed the doors softly behind them, and the silence that fell over the room was thicker than the fog outside, a silence broken only by Grandma's quiet sobs and Mom's occasional whimper. No one moved. No one spoke. The delicious food Grandma had made sat on the dining table, cold and untouched, the apple pie I'd wanted so badly still on the counter, its sweet scent fading into the bitter air of grief and guilt. I floated around the room, touching the things that were mine, the things that would now be left behind. My crayons scattered on the floor by the coffee table, the ones I'd used to draw the family portrait. My favorite stuffed rabbit, sitting on the arm of the couch, its ear torn, the one Grandma had sewn back for me 100 times. My small red boots by the front door, the ones Mom had said were too small, the ones she'd refused to buy new ones for because Chloe doesn't need nice things if she can't even do math. I touched the shreds of my drawing on the floor, the pieces of our happy family, and I tried to put them back together, my invisible fingers brushing the paper, but they just fell apart again, like everything else. I wanted to hug Grandma, to tell her I was okay, to wipe her tears. I wanted to yell at Mom and Dad, to ask them why they'd never loved me, why they'd never seen me, the artist, the girl who loved to draw sunsets and bunnies and family portraits, the girl who'd tried so hard to be good, who'd counted every step even when her legs hurt, even when she was freezing, even when she thought she couldn't go on. I wanted to ask them if it was all worth it, if their perfect family, their prodigy son, was worth losing me for. But I couldn't. I was just a ghost, a silent witness to their grief, a reminder of the mistake they'd made, a mistake they'd carry with them for the rest of their lives. As the night wore on, the clock ticking past midnight, into the new year, the grief in the room shifted, turning into something else. Guilt, anger, blame. Mom finally lifted her head from the couch, her eyes red and puffy, her voice hoarse, and she turned on Dad, her grief turning into rage. You let her do it. You stood there and let me kick her out of the car. You said it was normal for her to be late. You said she needed to exercise. This is your fault too. You never defended her. You never loved her either. Dad flinched, as if she'd slapped him, and he stood up, his own anger flaring, his voice rising. And what about you? You're the one who called her a waste, a trash, an inferior gene. You're the one who tore up her drawing, who made her count steps as punishment, who forgot to give her a coat. You've hated her since the day she was born because she wasn't Sam. Because she wasn't perfect. Their words cut through the air, sharp and cruel, and Grandma stood up, her voice loud and firm, silencing them both. Enough. Both of you. This isn't the time to blame each other. You both failed her. You both let her down. She was your daughter, your little girl, and you treated her like a burden, like a mistake. And now she's gone, and you'll have to live with that for the rest of your lives. She walked over to the coffee table, picked up the blood-stained camera, and held it gently, as if it was a precious treasure, and I saw her brush a finger over the lens, as if she was touching my face. She was a good girl, a sweet girl. She loved to draw, loved to make people happy. She drew that family portrait for you, Jennifer. She drew it because she wanted to be part of your perfect family. She wanted you to love her. Grandma's voice broke, and she set the camera down, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I hope you both remember that. Every single day. Sam slipped out of the room while Mom and Dad were arguing, and I followed him up the stairs to his bedroom, the big, fancy bedroom with the math posters on the wall, the trophy shelf filled with awards for perfect scores, the expensive toys Mom and Dad had bought him to reward his genius. He closed the door behind him, and he sank down on his bed, pulling his knees to his chest, and he cried big. He